Hello, TECA1318. Here is your week 4 explanation. We have talked about nutrition, we've talked about health, and now we're going to switch to safety. How do we supervise? How do we create a safe environment to keep kids from injuring themselves, from hazards, as well as from themselves? So we've got two chapters, chapter 13 and 14, that we do by Friday. And then your assignment, which is your last field experience, will be due on Sunday. So chapter 13, as we roll over, chapter 13 is going to be enhancing safety through appropriate environments. So this is how do you design an environment um, and keep them safe from themselves, because they may not realize, climbing up a bookshelf, how unsteady that may be, those different types of things. And so, how do we keep them physically safe? How do we keep them emotionally safe as well? Is another thing I think that society is really starting to shine a light on as well. So, for example, with all the kids with COVID-19, um, hearing about it, seeing people with masks, like how do you help somebody's mental health through that, and realize that you may see some more childlike behaviors. You may see more whining and complaining and stomach aches because they are dealing with that kind of trauma as well. Unintentional injuries. So, how do you design a classroom to be as safe as possible? And then, if you go back to last week where we talk about risky play, how do you provide them a safe place to do some of those things that a child needs to do to create physical strength as well as social emotional development? Now here we have chapter 14. So last chapter talked about how do we design an environment to stay safe where there's no traffic run patterns in the classroom, to how do you keep a classroom safe due to supervision. And that's going to be the big thing, especially if you're working in a licensed child care center, where they come out, and that's licensing's main job, is to make sure that kids are safe. It's why we don't put infants in those rock swings. We don't leave kids to sleep in their car seats because infants' windpipes are the size of straws. And if you think about collapsing a straw because their head is so heavy, it's why we have infant deaths from them sleeping in car seats. And so always putting infants on their backs. I've got infants in my head. But for older kids, how do you create rules? How do you always have eyes and ears on the kids? How do you create routine so they know what to do? And of course, safe transportation. In another class, someone was talking about unloading and unloading kids on a van as well. So that's going to be chapter 14. Then you're going to be looking at your field experience. And so if you are currently working in a child care setting, an early childhood program, the Boys and Girls Club, wherever you're at, you will follow this video right here. There is a checklist. If you don't have infants, you don't do that part. If you don't have pools, you don't do that part. But it is a good look at all of the little areas, indoors and outdoors. And so it will give you a better awareness of what to be on the lookout for. If you cannot observe in a child care center, then you're going to go to a local playground with kids on it, not on it, sit on a bench, and then you're going to complete these two on a public playground to find out how safe are they. If you think about the playgrounds that were around in the 70s and the 80s where they have really hot, and another thing is water. A lot of things about burns, second and third degree burns on children, because they turn the hose on, and the water that's actually in the hose that hasn't been piped out, that's been sitting in the hot sun, is scalding. Um, my daughter has a classmate whose older sister climbed on monkey bars and has burns on her hands that they had to wrap. So those are some things to think about. So when you're going there, you're going to write up findings, any improvements that needed to be added to be in compliance, um, anything else you would add or take away. Write this up in 2 pages, and then include the sketch of the classroom or the outside play area for everybody. And then you're going to scan and upload APA formatting. So that's going to be it. Here is the rubric that I will be using. any recommendations. So if there aren't any, I mean, that drops you down to a B right there out of 100 points. So make sure that all of this is in there. And I look forward to seeing what you guys find out in your child cares in your local playground settings.